When an FBI director sits under oath and says the Epstein trafficking network ended with just 2 names, the room goes silent. It's not disbelief, it's shock. Years of whispers, promises, and viral claims suddenly collapsed into a single word: zero. No list, no powerful names, no hidden files, just Epstein and Maxwell. Case closed. But what happens when that answer comes from the same people who built entire movements demanding the full truth? That's when the story stops being about Epstein and starts being about power. Representative Jared Moskowitz wasn't about to let that moment slide. In a hearing that had already felt tense, he leaned forward, cutting through the usual political theater.
The President of the United States said, Trump is either a cynical asshole or he's America's Hitler. And so this is the problem. Like, I don't want to have to say this garbage, but you want me to sit here and get painted with one brush, the whole left. No, there are extremes on the left, and there are extremes on the right. And we collectively should tackle that. But to come here and just look at us and say we all support what's going on in the extremes is why we can't solve anything in this building. Director, let me say first, thank you for being here, and my condolences on the loss of your friend. And I'm happy to hear that you want to do more on the social media platforms. Okay, it's crazy what's going on the social media platforms. There are so many conspiracy theories on what's going on with Charlie Kirk. Israel assassinated him, right? There are conspiracy theories about your personal social life all day. It is totally rampant. Big names on the right, Candace Owens, right? Talking about how what's been released as far as the dialogue between the perpetrator and his roommate is manufactured by the FBI, manufactured by the administration. It is totally rampant, allowing foreign governments to just perpetrate these platforms, all of these bots, all of the time to weaponize Americans. You see what's going on here? This is a byproduct of all of that. What's going on in the streets is a byproduct of all of that. What's happening is you see people celebrate Luigi Mangione is a byproduct of all of that. And so if we want to do something, then we should talk about Section 230. We should talk about how we're going to make sure that we don't let foreign governments poison our children's mind. And so I will work with you on that, Director.
I'll work with you on 230 any day.
No problem. So now, that was the good part. I want to take your attention back a second, okay? Breaking news. Kash Patel is nominated to be the FBI director. Dan Bongino is nominated to be the number 2 at the FBI. MAGA celebrates, rejoices, bells are ringing out. The team, Patel, Bongino, that sought out every podcast microphone to talk about the Epstein list. The names are finally going to get released. It begins. They produce white binders. Phase 1 with the podcasters. This is not actually one of them, of course. I made this. Your name's on it, right? And the names are going to come out. Pam Bondi says the list is on her desk. Then a memo comes out all of a sudden and says, there's no list. Oh, no phase 2. Phase 2 binders never happen. You said the conspiracy theories around Epstein just aren't true. They never have been. And yesterday, in an answer to Senator Kennedy, you said the FBI is not in possession of any credible evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone but himself. So according to your testimony yesterday and in this committee, according to the evidence the FBI has, the number of names on the list are 0.
No,
zero.
The index has been released, and the number of people involved in that trafficking operation were charged in 2018.
Other than Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, your testimony in the Senate and here is that according to the evidence you have, the number of other names is 0.
That were charged based on credible evidence.
Well, who are the other names? Give me the other names that weren't charged.
We are not releasing the names of anyone because the Department of Justice never does that of anyone that didn't have any credible information to attack them.
Let me move forward. The president has, you've seen the picture of the woman's body with the writing and the president's signature. The president says that's not his, okay? President says it's not his. The Republican colleagues say it's not his. The administration say it's not his. will you be opening up an investigation into the Epstein estate for putting out a fake document with the president's signature linking him to the world's largest pedophile ring? Will you be opening that investigation into that?
On what basis?
On what basis? They literally put out a fake document, according to the president, with a fake signature. It's a forgery of the president of the United States signature. That's the basis.
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay, I look forward to that investigation. Am I over? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your diligence.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair.
He reminded everyone what MAGA figures like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino had spent years claiming, that they would uncover everything, no matter how high the names went. They'd turned Epstein's files into a rallying cry. Podcasts, rallies, interviews, all promising that when they took charge, the truth would finally be revealed. And yet here they were, in control, saying the exact opposite. No list, no names, no evidence. The movement that once demanded transparency was now burying its own story. That's when Moskowitz went in for the moment that made headlines. He brought up the photo, the one that spread like wildfire online. The image of a woman's body, with writing on her skin and a signature that looked eerily familiar. The signature, he said, matched the president's. The president says it's not his, Moskowitz noted. The administration says it's not his. The FBI says it's not his. So will you open an investigation into whoever faked that signature? The question hit like a thunderclap. Because if the document was forged, that's not just a rumor. That's a crime. A forgery involving the most powerful person in the country tied to one of the darkest scandals in modern history. Yet instead of outrage or urgency, Patel just asked, on what basis? As if the basis wasn't already sitting right there in front of him. A forged signature linking the president to a global trafficking operation. For any other name, it would have triggered an immediate investigation, headlines, congressional outrage. But this time, just silence. A pause. A shrug. Then finally, sure, I'll do it. That answer said everything. It wasn't commitment, it was performance. Moskowitz smiled thinly, said, good. I look forward to that investigation. And the clock ran out. But the damage was done. In that exchange, he'd pulled the curtain back on something far bigger than Epstein. He'd shown how politics decides which truths get chased and which get buried. Because this isn't just about the photo, or even the so-called Epstein list. It's about how a story that once promised to expose the elite became a tool for the powerful to protect themselves. Remember the hype? The white binders, Phase 1, Phase 2. Those promises that the names are coming. The rallies where followers were told justice was finally on its way. It was a myth built to energize outrage. And once the myth was no longer convenient, they pretended it never existed. That's the danger of weaponizing conspiracy. When politicians use scandals as ammunition, they end up shooting holes through truth itself. Patel's testimony made that clear. He told Congress that no credible evidence exists beyond Epstein and Maxwell, that the number of other people tied to the case is zero. But if that's true, why spend years building entire narratives around secret files and lists? Why let millions believe that justice was just waiting for the right people to take over? Because outrage is power. And in Washington, outrage is currency. Moskowitz saw that playbook in real time. He didn't just question Patel's answers. He questioned the entire theater. He called out the hypocrisy of painting all criticism as left-wing extremism, while ignoring how far-right conspiracies had poisoned the country's discourse. He even pointed out that violence doesn't belong to one side, reminding everyone that the same chamber they were sitting in had once been attacked by a mob driven by misinformation. His point was simple. If both sides keep using lies to justify power, the truth never stands a chance. And that brings us to the deeper layer, the chaos that fills the space when truth disappears. Online, entire ecosystems profit from disinformation. Social media platforms flooded with fake screenshots, AI-generated documents, and claims that the FBI is covering up the truth. Foreign bots amplify it, influencers monetize it, and ordinary people lose their sense of what's real. It's not just a political problem, it's psychological warfare. Every time an official dodges a question or says, on what basis, the echo chambers grow louder. And those echo chambers don't just spread confusion, they radicalize it. That's the part Moskowitz called out when he offered to work with Patel on reforming Section 230, the law that shields social media companies from accountability. He wasn't just throwing policy jargon. He was pointing to the root of the problem, how unchecked platforms have turned manipulation into an industry. Foreign governments, he said, are poisoning our children's minds. And he wasn't exaggerating. The Epstein narrative, like so many others, became a perfect case study in how chaos spreads when power looks the other way. Because think about what's really being said here. The same movement that demanded full disclosure is now telling America there's nothing to see. The same officials who swore they'd reveal the truth are now hiding behind legal technicalities. And the same media figures who once shouted "cover up" are now silent. That's not just hypocrisy. It's a betrayal of every survivor who's waited years for justice. When Patel said there was no credible evidence of trafficking beyond Epstein himself, it erased the years of testimony, the investigations, the victims who risked everything to come forward. It told survivors that unless their abusers are powerful enough to make headlines, their pain doesn't count. That's why the moment mattered. Moskowitz wasn't just grilling a witness. He was exposing a system that shields the powerful and silences the vulnerable. And yet, it's not just the FBI or Congress. It's all of us. Because when the public starts treating truth like entertainment, when we choose the version of the story that fits our side, we help build the very walls that hide the truth. That's the cycle Patel's answer revealed. Deny, deflect, distract, and watch the outrage machine spin itself into exhaustion. But there's a reason this moment hit so hard online. Because for millions watching, it confirmed what they've suspected all along, that the rules change when the stakes involve power. Imagine for a second that the same document had shown a Democratic leader's name instead. There would have been emergency hearings, investigations, primetime coverage, weeks of outrage. But here, the director of the FBI shrugged off the question like it was nothing. That's not neutrality. That's selective justice. And selective justice is how democracies break down. Once people believe that the law applies differently depending on who's in power, it stops being law. It becomes theater. And right now, that's what America's justice system risks becoming. A stage where truth is optional and accountability depends on allegiance. That Moskowitz's line of questioning peeled that back layer by layer. Every time Patel tried to pivot, he brought it back to facts. Every time someone tried to turn it into a partisan attack, he reminded them that this isn't about left or right. It's about whether institutions still serve the people or just the powerful. His frustration wasn't performance. It was recognition that Congress has spent years talking about accountability without ever reaching it. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The Epstein case was never just about one man's crimes. It was about a system that lets wealth and influence build shields around predators. When Epstein died, the opportunity for full justice died with him. But what survived was the question of who helped, who knew, and who looked away. And instead of chasing that truth, politicians turned it into a political weapon. They raised money off it. They built audiences off it. They sold outrage while survivors were still waiting for closure. That's the cycle Moskowitz shattered with his questions. He turned the spotlight back on the people who once promised transparency. He didn't let Patel hide behind bureaucratic language. And for a brief moment, viewers saw what accountability could look like, if anyone in Washington actually wanted it. But even that glimpse was fleeting. The hearing ended, the headlines moved on, and social media went back to spinning its own version of events. Yet the questions remain. Why did the Epstein list story vanish the moment it threatened to implicate the powerful? Why did Patel, who once vowed to expose everything, suddenly claim there's nothing there? And what does it say about our system that no one seems interested in finding out? Those questions matter because they go beyond politics. They go to the heart of what kind of nation we want to be. A country that investigates all allegations equally, or one that protects its chosen few. A country that believes survivors, or one that buries them under partisanship. A country that demands evidence, or one that's content with convenient silence. By the end of the hearing, one thing was clear. The fight over the Epstein files is no longer just about the files. It's about who gets to decide what the truth even is. When Patel said zero, he wasn't just closing a case. He was closing a door. And if the public doesn't keep knocking, that door stays shut forever. As the clip spread online, something powerful happened. Viewers began asking their own questions. Not about party lines, but about fairness, trust, and the way truth gets managed in America. They saw a congressman calling out hypocrisy to a man who once sold himself as a truth teller. They saw a confrontation between power and accountability. And for once, accountability didn't flinch. And that's what makes this moment more than just another hearing. It's a warning, a reminder that truth only survives if people demand it, that justice only exists if it applies to everyone, and that the most dangerous cover-ups aren't the ones done in secret. They're the ones done in plain sight, with cameras rolling and nobody paying attention. Because in the end, this wasn't just a clash between two men in a committee room. It was a mirror held up to an entire system. A system that thrives on outrage but fears consequence. A system that promises answers but delivers silence. And the question now isn't whether the Epstein list exists. It's whether truth itself still does. If you believe truth shouldn't depend on politics, if you think survivors deserve real justice, and if you want to see power finally held accountable, then don't look away. Subscribe, share, and keep this story alive. Because the moment we stop paying attention, the people who fear the truth win. And they've been winning for far too long.